Welcome to Creating Effective Infographics. My name is Kate, and I'm a coach in the Writing, Reading, Speech Assistance area of the Learning Commons at the College of DuPage. In this webinar, we'll work to answer three main questions. What is an infographic? Why should we use them? And how do we create one of our own? Let's get started with the most important question in this list. What is an infographic? You may know more than you think. Is this an infographic? How about this? Or even this? What do they have in common with one another? All three communicate information quickly, hazards, phone numbers, a comparison, using graphic, clear visual cues and representations, color, symbols, and patterns. They are all infographics. Among these examples, the knitting piece is the best example of an infographic in that it works from a reliable, accurate data set. An infographic represents data using graphic visuals and text to educate and inform. More involved or evolved infographics can also tell a story and establish or prove an argument. Let's go back to the image from the first slide. As I share a little about its backstory, think about how it demonstrates the three elements of an infographic: data representation, graphic visuals, a clear purpose to educate and inform. Sue Montgomery, a councilwoman in Montreal, tweeted about this knitting project in May of 2019. It went viral soon after, and she shared more relevant data points in an interview with the CBC. There's a gender parity in the council, with 31 female counselors and 34 male counselors. The total amount of red and green that we can see represents not just the number of times men and women spoke, but also the length of time they spoke. This is likely not what you may have had in mind when I started talking about infographics. Maybe you thought of something more like this. Think about how this demonstrates the three elements of an infographic: data representation, graphic visuals, clear intent to educate and inform. The format of the infographic sets up a comparison to inform the audience about the differences between cats and dogs. There are icons in the center and at the top that serve as visual cues. And there's a great deal of data provided, all in text in this example. This infographic actually came from a QR code found on a grocery store shelf. Infographics are increasingly popular as marketing tools, but they still follow the same rules as other infographics. This is not the official first infographic, but is certainly one of the first. It was created by Florence Nightingale in 1857 as part of a nearly 300-page document detailing her observations and statistical analysis of the condition of military hospital camps during the Crimean War. The text here on the left is essentially a key. The blue wedges represent deaths caused by preventable or treatable diseases. The red wedges represent deaths caused by wounds sustained in battle. And the black wedges represent deaths caused by everything else. It's worth noting that ultimately this infographic was successful, and by 1880, significant improvements of the hospital conditions led to better living conditions for the general population in England as well. Speaking of England, this London tube map, created by Harry Beck in 1933, is a great example of infographics intended for widespread, regular use. The tube system is an urban planning accomplishment, and the iconic map has been reinterpreted for other public transit systems around the world. It should look familiar to you if you've ever ridden on the CTA. We couldn't talk about infographics without at least mentioning Edward Tufte. Tufte, the self-professed father of data visualization, has written two cornerstone books in the field: Visual Display and Beautiful Evidence. In 2009, Tufte served on the Recovery Independent Advisory Panel, a group that created this map to show where awards funded by the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act were distributed. While Tufte's work is sometimes compared to that of Picasso and Da Vinci, and sometimes Tufte himself is drawing that comparison, this particular infographic is generally considered a failure because the data of the specific awards and locations is not easily accessible to the reader and audience. Aside from Tufte's chaotic map, think about your own exposure to and interaction with infographics. Do you find infographics effective? Do you learn more or less from them? And why do you think that is? According to Linkow et al. In Infographics, The Power of Visual Storytelling, our brains love infographics. Let's explore a little bit more about why that is. According to Colin Ware, we acquire more information through our visual system than we do through all our other senses combined. This is because visual representations include pre-attentive attributes that can be processed quickly and extremely accurately. On the next two slides, you'll be shown a series of numbers. On each slide, find the number 5s. You'll have 5 seconds per slide. Ready? Did you find 3 5s on the first slide? How about on the second slide? If you found all the 5s on both slides, you probably located them faster the second time when they were in red. This is because color is a pre-attentive attribute, which can be combined with other pre-attentive attributes seamlessly, and that our brains can recognize and process simultaneously. Because pre-attentive processing happens quickly, data visualizations also take advantage of shorter attention spans. Other pre-attentive attributes that you may be familiar with include orientation, shape, size, intensity, and spatial position. Many of us consider ourselves visual learners. According to Langhow et al., individual learning style preference is secondary to learning styles used and represented in information media, like the internet. Audio-only content is minimal, and kinesthetic experiences are virtually non-existent, even with the growth of VR, virtual reality. So information visualizations capitalize on the saturation of visual imagery in web content. We know now what an infographic is. We also know why it is an effective form of communicating information and data. But what makes an infographic effective in and of itself? An effective infographic includes a clear thesis or story, accurate, relevant data, connections between sections, and design that serves the narrative. If this sounds a lot like the writing process, that's because it is. Drafting an essay and creating an infographic, as you can see here in this infographic, are very similar. When we're ready to start to create an infographic, we'll start by choosing a topic. Much like in writing, the narrower the topic, the more pointed and concise the thesis. Also like writing, genre will matter. Most infographics will fall under a few broad genres: compare-contrast, timeline or narrative, informative, or argumentative. Most infographics are incredibly narrow in their approach, and those that aren't feel visually overwhelming, even at first glance. Unfocused, broad topic infographics are also very often text-heavy and text-reliant. You can see in this infographic, the author has chosen to focus on a rider for a single band for a single concert. There's a great deal of information here, judging by length, but it is confined and controlled like a clear, focused argument. In this infographic, we have another focused, narrow argument. Instead of looking at a range of publication years or a variety of genres, the authors here have chosen to take a look at 1 year, 2018, and one genre, children's literature. Their argument about the representation of diversity in children's books is stated explicitly on the left of the infographic, and then depicted visually across the rest of it. As you begin to gather reliable, correct, useful data for your infographic, note how it differs from academic writing in its source preferences. Infographics benefit from a single source or a limited number of sources that are complementary. The source evaluation test for infographic sources is story, reliability, relevancy, and limited scope. There's no standard format for source citation in infographics. The only rule is that citation or credit should be on an infographic in some capacity. This infographic uses footnotes to credit its sources. Your instructor will likely indicate how you should credit your sources in their syllabus or in the details of the assignment. This infographic simply names its sources. The more specific the information is, the more recent the source should be. For historical or narrative infographics, such as this one about the sinking of the Titanic, there is less concern about the currency of source material. Once you have gathered your sources, you'll need to interpret and summarize the data. Written research methods could directly apply here. Whether you use note cards, Cornell notes, ICE paragraphs, any of those could work to interpret this data. If your infographic is going to be created from a paper you've already written, this part of the process is already done. You'll just need to review your arguments and select those that will best fit in your infographic. If the topic and data you find is best visualized using charts and graphs, you'll need to match the type you're using with the data you are choosing to represent. To compare, use a column graph, a scatter plot, or a line graph. To show distribution, use a column graph or a line graph. To detail composition, try a pie chart or an area chart. And to depict trends in data, use a column graph, line graph, or scatter plot. In this example, you can see a horizontal column graph visualizing data for federal aid. The authors also use a color gradient vertical column graph to show earnings by educational attainment. After you've completed research and matched the data with the most appropriate chart or graph type, you can begin to draft your infographic. Drafts or outlines for infographics, and also for web design, are called wireframes. Most online infographic design platforms offer wireframes in the form of templates. The platform you use to create your infographic is entirely your choice. Canva, Pictochart, and Venngage are 3 options that are completely free online. Using the wireframe you created, take some time to explore the tools offered in each platform and choose whichever is the best fit for you. The final step in the infographic creation process is revision. You can work with a coach in WRSA on your infographic just as you would with a speech or written essay. We can support you at any point in the process, from choosing and narrowing a topic, to figuring out how to move your ideas from the wireframe to a design platform, to reading through a final draft.